Thank you all and welcome to my session, Azure Function 101 for everyone. And it's like for beginner as well. So it's like introductory session. And it's here at Virtual Boston Azure. So purpose of this session is to provide you a very quick overview of Azure Function and show you how you can create your first Azure function. You can debug it, you can test it, you can deploy it in various different ways using like Visual Studio or maybe Azure Portal and many other techniques. So let's start with myself. I think you now already know. So I'm just giving few information regarding my social media network. So you can see, you can find me in LinkedIn or you can find me in GitHub. So I have a repo there. And end of the session, I'm going to upload this repository there as well. And you can find me on Twitter as well. So let's now move into today's agenda. So today's agenda is mainly divided into three parts. In first part, I'm going to give you a quick overview of Azure Function, so you get idea why you need this and how it works and how you can start using it. Then I'm going to show you few tools, like list of tools in second parts. And third parts, we're going to see series of demo. So here we are creating a Azure Function using Azure Portal, Visual Studio 2019, and we debug that, we test that, and we deploy that. And we also test it using the Postman as well. So let's start with first one, which is the Azure Functions overview. So what is Azure Functions? I'm sure you all know about functions. You may have used in programming language like C Sharp or Python, Java or Go or any other language, or a programming language like a database and Oracle and many other programming database language. So function is a small piece of code which execute independently and it's return a results, and mainly we do it for usability purpose. So Azure function is the same similar, but here function or small piece of code on a Azure cloud. So Azure Function is a solution for easily running small piece of code in a cloud, or you can say function in a cloud. It has a few characteristics. So it's like it's event driven. Even in our normal functions, if we have it, then someone need to call that. Maybe in some program, in different line in your programming, you will call that, so your function will execute. But in Azure Function, it event driven. So something should happen. There should be a trigger which satisfied a particular condition, and based on that, your piece of code will execute. So here you have a few, I think various triggers is that like it's a time-based trigger events, it HTTP triggers, it's like other Azure services like blob storage related triggers available, and there are many more which we're going to see that. So once you have the trigger and its trigger satisfied a condition, your piece of code will execute. So here it's event driven. Next one, it's a serverless. So you don't need to worry about it's serverless as well as is a platform as a service. So you don't need to worry about compute infrastructure, software installation, operating system, or implementing any monitoring solution. Azure will do it for you. So you can fully focus on implementation and you can quickly build your function. And it's a scalable. So it can scale up and scale down automatically. When, like, for example, when there is a seasonal demands comes, for example, in summer, you can see that you have more ice cream sales. So at that time, it has a more traffic and you need more compute power as well. So at that time, it can be scaled up automatically. And when it's winter or when there is no demand, then it can be scaled down as well. So ultimately, it save your cost as well. And it's lightweight because it's a small piece of code. So in short, we can say that Azure Function is a serverless solution that allows you to write less code, maintain less infrastructure, and save on a cost. And this is a symbol of the function. So it has three piece of things. It has a code, it has an event, and it has a data. So now let's see why you need Azure Function. Few of the things you already know based on my previous slide. It's a platform as a service. So you don't need to worry about, as I said earlier as well, compute infrastructure or software installation, web server configuration, or implementing monitor solution or like that. Azure will handle it for you, so you can quickly build your solution. And this small piece of code you writing, and you don't need to worry about infrastructures. You can just write it, and then you can deploy into portal, and you can use it by other triggers, using the triggers. So you can build it very quickly rather than waiting for infrastructure. You can easily integrate with other this Azure function with solution like Azure Data Solution, Azure App Solution, or Azure or IoT solution. And once you have this piece of code, you deploy it in Azure. It can be used by your any solutions if you have in your organization. You can easily integrate with third-party services as well, and it give you a choice of your programming language like C sharp, F sharp, Java, JavaScript, Python, or PowerShell, etc. So for example, if you are familiar with C sharp, then you don't need to worry about to learn into Java or Python. You can write down your Azure function in C sharp code, and then you can deploy it, and it's a cost effective. So these are the main reasons we can use Azure function. Now let's move into how Azure Function works. What are the key components it has, like starting for coding to execution. So like, let's say imagine that we have a piece of code, and this piece of code maybe do some calculation. For example, addition of two number, or maybe it's ordering the file when file have in your blob storage. So I have a piece of code. So now I want to execute this function based on some condition, based on some trigger. So I have a user HTTP request trigger, and based on when I have a file in my blob storage. So this trigger will execute, and a piece of code will execute, and it's return a result. I'm saving that result into returning that result into blob storage as well. So I have at the moment, this is a very simple example. It has HTTP triggers, request trigger, and piece of code. It's reading data from blob storage and writing into blob storage as well, without any other extra components. So now let's say that I have a Azure table service storage, and I have even a Cosmo DB as well. So like there is a requirement that I need to read data from different Azure services, and then my piece of code works, and then it's written the results and it's stored into different Azure services as well. So at that time, you can have input bindings. You can have input bindings, and you can have output bindings as well. So these are the output binding, for example. So I'm saving it to 3 different places. So you can see that here, you can have more than one input bindings. You can have more than one output bindings. However, you have only and only one triggers. So this way Azure function works, and there are 4 components like trigger, input binding, output binding, and your piece of code. So now let's move into next one. Oh yeah, this is the link which provide you more information regarding which Azure service you use as input binding or output binding or as a trigger. And now let's see a tools which you can use in order to create your Azure function. Or you can deploy your Azure function using those tools. So before we going into tools, you need Azure subscription. If you are first time using Azure, then you need Azure subscription, which you can get it free or as a first time Azure subscription user, or you can have it as a part of your organization, or you can use as a part of Visual Studio subscription, or you can use as a pay as you go. So once you have a subscription, you can have your you can go to portal.azure.com, and then you can start create your Azure function. The first one is you can create a function using Azure portals. So if you are very new, then you can start creating function using Azure portal first. So you get conceptual idea. Then after you can use a Visual Studio 2019 or latest version of Visual Studio. It can be done in older version, but in older version you can't there is some limitation, so you can't debug it locally or like that. You can use a Visual Studio Code as well. You can use Azure PowerShell. You can use Azure CLI, which is a command line, or you can use Azure ARM templates. So this is, if you want to do a completely automation, 100%, then you can use Azure ARM templates. So you can deploy your Azure function apps and functions when you need it, and then you can delete your function app, and when you need it again, you can do it again using the CI/CD, which is one button clicks away. So that way you can save your cost as well if you do that, and it's 100% automation automated. So you don't need to do manual things if you have more than one environment as well. So these are the tools which you can use to create your Azure function. Now let's start with the demo. So let's go to Portal. So for that, let's first create our first Azure function. So for that, we need to create function app first. You just search function app and then you can create by using this way. So here you need to select a few things like your resource group. You can create new resource group or you can use existence one. Just selecting existence one, for example. And then here I need to give my function app name. So just giving any suitable name. And you can select here option that you want to publish via code or by Docker. So I'm just choosing code. Here you can select your different language runtime. So I'm just selecting .NET, and it's automatically select latest version. You can change as well. And you need to select a location which is closest to your data and wherever you have. So you need to select the closest one, but I'm just keeping default one at the moment. And here you select operating system. You like to do Windows or Linux. So I'm just keeping Windows. And this is a very important part, which is related to your compute infrastructure. As is serverless, but we can select here based on that. So we need serverless or we need a function premium, which is a dedicated and it's enterprise level. So here you can have your own dedicated resources as well, and you can have app service plan as well. So we are selecting a serverless one. And then we're going to next. Here's the storage account. So when you create your function app, it create a storage account as well, because that storage account hold your code. So you can have a default one or you can create your own as well. So I'm just keeping default one. Then we go to next. Here we are not going to change anything. And then we're going to next. And this is application insight. So it's also create application insights as well, which help you to give you when your function run and if you want to troubleshoot or monitor it, it help you on that time. So you can say no as well, but here I'm just keeping it. And here is a default name, but you can give suitable name as well if you want to give. And then we're going to next. Here we are not changing at the moment anything. And now we said create and review. So now let's create it. So while it's creating it, let's go back to here. So we have just created Azure Function app first, not a function app. So function app has four components. First one is storage account. So this storage account hold your function actual code in its file shared area. Then it will create another component, which is a application insight, which help you to provide some monitoring and troubleshooting ideas. So if you have that, you can troubleshoot and monitor your function while when it's running. You can check history data as well, and it's give you a lot of other things as well. The next one and third one is a function app. So here you are actually creating your function in a function app. So it's host your functions which are which should have a same runtime and same versions. So for example, if you have a 3 function in your function app, then all 3 function should have a same .NET version, whatever version you choose, it should be same, and it should have a version also same, runtime as well as version, both should be same. And fourth components, which is a app service plans, which is related to a compute infrastructure. As we said earlier, it's a serverless, but it need a compute when it's execute. So here you are predefine your compute infrastructure. You need a serverless, or you need a dedicated one, or you need a fixed one. And you can share this with other app services as well. So these are the 4 components. Now let's go back here and see if it has created or not. So it has a successfully created. So let's go back to here. I think I created on here. So you will see that these are the 4 components it has created. These 4 components: storage account, function app, application insight, and plan, which is related to cost and compute infrastructure. So this is a storage account. And as I say that it should save here, it should create this one. So it's giving exact name of your function app, and it's add something random things here, and your code will be here. Your function code will be here inside the sites in here. So here reside your Azure function code. So that is a function, that is a storage account, and this is a function app. So you can see that this is the overview of your function app. You will see more information here, your service plan and other things. It's running or not. And here you will see so many things, inbuilt things, which Azure is providing. But you don't need to worry about it for beginner level. So you just need to think about functions and function key. So if you want to share your function with different Azure services like Azure Data Factory or Azure Synapse Analytics or Azure Logic Apps, and you tell them to execute your function, then they need to have this function key. So you need to provide that function key. It's like a connection string. That is a one thing. And also it has a config. So here you can configure your function app as well. For example, you want to change your blob storage connection string or database connection string, or you want to change some version. So by default, it has this, that you can do it here. And there is edit buttons is here. So you can edit it, because sometimes you need to change your storage account. Then you can directly come here and you can configure it, because it's different based on your different environments. But if you do automatically by CI/CD pipeline, then this will be done automatically. You don't need to change manually anything. So that is a config. And this is the access key, app key. And you can click here, show value. And this value you need to share if you want to use this function using the function key, rather than service principal or other different way. And let's go now function. So this is a functions. And at the moment, we don't have any functions. So we can create it by portal first time. This is first time we creating. So we selecting here option, which is develop in a portal. And these are all triggers. As I said earlier, it's event based and it can allow you to triggers. So these all are triggers. You can see that there are so many triggers available. These all are triggers which can execute your function once condition is satisfied. So if you don't find your trigger here, you can customize it or you can use HTTP triggers. So let's use HTTP trigger. So we have selected our trigger. We selected that is we are creating into portal. So you can see that it has created it, and you can test it using Azure Portal using here. And these are the code it has created automatically for you. So you don't need to worry about syntax if you knew and you don't know. So this is the function. And this way you can write down some log as well if you want to write down log in your app insights. This is a request. It's passed as a query string or maybe body of that function. And here we are deserializing it. And here we just returning it. That's it. You can add here your own logic, some steps or calculation, and then you can return results a different way, not this way. This is very simple example. So here we are checking that if is my input, if we are not passing any name, then it will give it this result. Uh, sorry, it's this one. But if we passing a name, then it will say hello, our name, and then it say this is the triggered function executed successfully. And it's return response in object. So this way you can do that. You can test here by using portal in here. I just clicking here. It has already given the name as well. So it's used that name, which is Azure. You can see it's written the result as well. Here you can check some logs as well. So let's close this one. And if you want to use this one in your local machine as well, then you can just copy this and you can go to, I think maybe uh, here in Postman, and you can run it like this way. It's simple because there is no other parameters or like that. So you can use it like this way. Otherwise, you can have a body message or like that in here. So now let's go back here. So this way you can create your function in Azure Portal. You can test it by using here. You can have URL using here, and you can monitor it here. Because we have just triggered our function, so it should become here. Sometimes it take time. I think it's used 5 minutes or like that. So you will see history here after some time. But if you want to see immediately, then you can go to here. And this is the app service insights. And here you can see that one history that it's triggered, it's success, it's written code, and you can see more information as well. This all information you can see it, and you can see parameters and many other things. And you can even find out if there is any exception as well, if fail or anything. So this is app insights which we have used during creating a function app. So now let's go to here. And, so this way you can create Azure function using Azure Portal. Now we're going to do same thing in using the Visual Studio as well. So let's go to Visual Studio. So I'm just going to use a Visual Studio 2019. You can use the latest version as well. So we are creating now Azure function using Visual Studio. So you're going to create a new project, which is a function app project. So first of all, we're creating a function app, and then we're adding function into our function app. So you need to select Azure function, and then you can click next. Here you need to give suitable name, but I'm just keeping as it is. You can select location, and you can give a solution name as well. So these are all trigger you can see in here as well. I'm just using default empty trigger. And here you can select your runtime as well. So if you're creating new, then always good to select latest version. And this is a storage emulator, which is like a storage in local. When you want to run in your function in locally, then this is work as a storage account. So let's create here. So this project is like a function app, which we done first time, which is a function app, which have 4 different components. We had that earlier. So we just creating that. I think it's still doing that. So it's now ready. So this is my function app project. And you see here that it has a package as well, which is related to Microsoft.NET.SDK functions. So if you have input bindings like a blob storage or table or queue, then you have here more packages as well related to table storage or queue or event grid. So that is one thing. This file is like related to your function app hosting information, and this file is a local.setting.json. So here you have information like your connection string, and if you want to have something related to configuration, then you can add it here. So that is a local.setting. And now let's add here function. So I'm adding new function here. I'm just doing quickly because we done same thing in a portal as well. Like you selecting triggers, and that's it. It's create automatically this code for you in Visual Studio. And you see that this is a function attributes, and this is my function name. And you can see this is my definition of a function. So here I have used the HTTP trigger. I have used a authorization level as a function, but here you can have anonymous, or there is one more option also available. And these are the get and post method, like which method is allowed. So I'm allowing to get and post, and I don't want to customize any URL. So yeah, it's by default null. And um, this is the request data because I have used HTTP request, and here I will get my request data as well. So now, and rest of the all things are same, which we have seen in Azure Portal. So this way you create your function and you can run your function in here. And if you press here debug, you can trigger it, you can debug it as well. So let me close now this solution because I have already solution running. So if I run same solution, then it will give me error related to port number. So let's see it in here, this solution. So let's say I already have this function here. I have placed debug points. And if I use now this function, because I'm debugging this function in my locally, so it's coming into here, and you can debug it in your local as well by using F11 or like that. I'm just doing continuously, and it's returning results as well. But if I add here query string like name, then it will return different results as well, different result as well. Like this way, if I pass, then it will run it and it will return as a different results because it's coming into this part. I think I did something wrong in here. It has to be, yeah. So, so this way you can debug using Visual Studio as well locally, and you can publish as well if you want to publish using. Let's go to solution, and here using manual using Visual Studio, you can deploy it by this way by clicking in here, and it asks you to select your storage account, app service plan, and few things, 3 to 4 things. So that's now let's go back to here in presentation. So we have created function apps, and now we have added function as well. We tested that function in Azure Portal, and we did same in a local machine as well. And we use Visual Studio as well. And we use the Postman to test that function as well. So now let's go to scenario, a few demos. So in this demo, we are going to read file from blob storage, and then we are generating a manifest file, and then we are saving that manifest file into blob storage. So here what we are doing, because there are few things is not possible in our data solution or IoT solution or app solution, then you can create function as well. So it's function reading the list of file from blob storage, and then it's generating a summary of the file like regarding those file which is already in blob storage, and it's creating new file with a summary of the whole list of files, and then it's saving into same blob storage. So that is one. And now let's go to here like what it used. So we have a piece of code which reading the file list of file from blob storage, and it's generating one summary of the file which having the e-takes and md5 and md and modified date and a few more things like counts and name of the file, and it saved that file into blob storage. But here we are not using bindings, so we have a piece of code which has everything written there, and this we have used a trigger which is http request trigger, and we are saving the result into Azure Blob Storage. We are creating a new files in Azure Blob Storage. So in my blob storage, I have a cars.csv file. You can have a list of file, like you have 5 files, and your file have accounts as well. So in my files, I have only 2 counts at the moment, 2 records at the moment, but it can be more than 1 record as well, and you can have more than 1 file as well. So in my C function code, it's the C# code, and it's read a file content, e-take, count, md, and there are few properties related to file from blob storage. And then is generate a separate new file having the list of the summary of the each file in that blob storage, and it's saved in a blob storage, in a same blob storage, or you can have another blob storage, or you can have some other Azure services as well. So this is the high level design. So now let's go back to in a portal. So this is my Azure, this is my resource group. And in my resource group, you can see that I have same information which we had in a previously created Azure function and function app. So this is my storage account. And in my storage account, you can see that I have a input container, output container, and this test container. So let's see that at the moment it has a car.csv file. And now I'm running, you will see that here one new file will generated. So now let's run the function. So this is my function app, and my function apps has 4 functions, and I'm going to running this manifest file. I think I have a parameters in my notebook. So you can see that this is my container, and I'm passing array value, but at the moment I have only one file. So that is a car.csv file, and it has 2 counts. So I'm passing this message, and I'm run it, and it's successfully ran. And if I go to here, if I refresh this, it generate new file. And this is a new file. It's a manifest file. And you see that it has this summary information. So if I had here 5 files, then I have a 5 entry here, like file, each file name, how many count it has, and this is the e-take, and this is a modified date. So if I search this e-take, let's go to here and search. So this is the file. You can see that it has a e-take here. So if I copy this e-take and if I search in here, it's matching it. So it should be exactly matched. That was the requirements, because this manifest file is used by another third-party solution. So they have that requirements as a part of data solution. So that's why we have created this. And let's go to here. So yeah, so this way manifest function run. And I think you can monitor as well. It's here quickly. Maybe I forget to enable this. But anyway, so but if you want to use that manifest function by other services, for example, Azure Data Factory or Azure Synapse Analytics, then you need to use this function key, unless you're using different mechanism. So here you can find your function key. This is your function key. So now let's go back to, let's close this one because we have done. Now let's go to see a code in Visual Studio for that function. So this is a create manifest file without any input and output binding information. Otherwise, it much easier if you use binding then, because they are Azure services and they allow binding as well as possible. So this is my function name. This is it's use HTTP trigger, and it's have a request data here, which is array which we are passing. It's allow for both method, and it's use a function authentication authorization level is a function, and there is no any customized URL. So it's deserializing it, my input data, which is here, and then it's used dictionary because it's a input data is in array format, and then it's creating here. So here it's reading each file from blob storage, and it's generating a summary and saving it to blob storage. So this is that function which do all things, but it's a little bit more code because you need to specify everything, your blob storage name, and then you need to you create few things like this way, pointing like manually we creating them by programmatically rather than using binding. So we need to go through loop by loop each file in a blob container, we reading that file, and then we're reading the particular properties like this one, this way we take properties and other properties, and then we're saving into new file, and then we save that file into blob storage. So that's what this function is doing. And yeah, so you can run locally as well. And actually I have already here in a Postman. Uh, okay, I think I need to copy URL, it's not here. So this is the URL of Azure function, which is in portal as well. You can see this one. That one also you can run here locally if you want to do. So this is URL from your Azure portals function URL, and you can pass it. But let me do it my local one, which is this one. Unless I have debug point. So this way it will return the result which we have the same result in our portal as well. And it's running this code as well. It's running this code. I don't think I have any debug point, so it should return. Yeah, it's already written. Okay. So you can see that it returned successfully as well. This is local URL. And if I go to that folder again, it has a file as well. I go to that container. Let's go to here. I think it's a storage in the here. It has two files now. These two, one which we run via portal and one which I've run using my local Postman. So that is the one. Now let's go back to here with the second demo as well, I think. Oh yeah, so this way it's create a file as well. So if you want to use this same demo in your environment, then you need these resources. You need to create resource group, you need to create function app, then you need to add a function in your function app, and you need a blob storage as well. So this is now second demo. So here we are using input and output binding. So it's very easy. It's you have a piece of code ready. You just few lines of code and it done it's done your purpose. So here we are resizing the image. So I have an image in my blob storage, and particularly I'm looking for .jpg image. So any name with .jpg, as soon as it's arrived in a blob storage, it has to execute a piece of code, which is Azure function, and it resize the image into two different sizes, small and medium, and it's stored into different container. So that is my requirements. And for that, here we have piece of code which doing the resizing image. Here I have input trigger, which is a blob storage trigger, and I have a binding. I have a Azure blob binding as input, and I have Azure blob binding as output as well. So here I have one image like car nameplate.jpg. As soon as this arrive into my blob storage, specific container, automatically piece of code run, and it's resize this image into two different size, and it's placed into Azure Blob Storage. And here I have used input and output bindings. So I have a C# code which convert a size in two different size and save into another blob storage like this way. So its name should be like same as what you have in here. Plus it's adding the few things like it says space or days SM, which is small, and days medium, and it's saving like this way. So now let's go back to portal, and here you can see that this is my function app. This is function, and this is the this is the resizing image function. Before run it, I would like to show you what I have in a container, so you will get idea after deployment. So let's go to storage. I think this is a storage account container, and my input container, I don't have anything, and my output container, I don't have anything at the moment. So, okay, so I'm just it's using this one. So as soon as the file arrive here, it resize it and it's stored into output folder. So let's add here file. So I'm just adding one JPG file. You can have a 100 JPG file at a time as well. So now what happen if I go here and I click here and I wait for some time. See, timestamp also you can check here. Today's timestamp. It's generated two files and it's resize as well. So you can see it here. This is a medium size image file, and this is a small one. You can have a various different version as well here, but I just use a basic one. So this is used by bindings. And if I go to here, function, even I don't know, need to run this function because it's automatically, it's a binding one. And you can check here as well, history as well. If you want to see that it auto, oh yeah, I again haven't configured this, but you can check it here as well if it's ran or not. So for that, I don't need to run that function. It is automatically running as soon as the file arrive into that folder in that container. So if you want to see a code for that, then this is a Visual Studio and this is a resize image. So here you can see that you will see here now more information. I have a blob trigger, which particularly looking into that input container and is looking for any file which is .jpg file. So this is an expression. Here you can have a various different expression as well. You can have concatenation and many other things. So this is my trigger. So when this condition arrived, as soon as the file arrived into your blob container, piece of code will execute. This Azure function will execute. So this is the trigger. Trigger has a input file information, and it has information regarding connection string, which storage is looking for. And I'm giving its name as an image. So this is original file when it's come into blob storage. And this is the output binding. So there are two output binding because I want to save two files. I'm passing one file, have one file, but it's returning two files. So here also we giving same name, but here we can have a days or space. So I have a space here. And I have permission given to write permission, and I'm writing into same storage account. You can have a different storage account as well, or you can have not a storage account. You can have like a table binding or queue binding or something else. And this is just its name. That's it. And here you can see that I'm resizing those image. And for that, I have this is a resizing logic. And see, this one line of code is writing a file into blob storage. That's it. You don't need to write down anything because you have a binding. You have used a binding. And for resizing, I have used just enum for three different size. That's it. That simple this code it is. And you can run locally as well. So now let's go back to presentation. So for that second demo, you need a Azure resource group, you need Azure function apps, you need a functions in your function app, you need a blob storage, and you can have key vaults as well. If you want to store secrets in key vaults, then you can use that one like that way as well. So now let's see how Azure Functions integrate with Azure Data Factory or Azure Synapse Analytics or other Azure services. So I have given example of Azure Data Factory here. So this is my Azure Data Factory and this is my Azure Function. And in Azure Function, I have 4 functions as you seen earlier. So here you can see that Azure Data Factory has Azure Function activity. So it's just calling that activity. It's passing the function name and function key. Function execute independently and it's return result into Azure Data Factory, which you can use for as a part of your extract load transform or a modern warehouse. You can use as a part of orchestration or pipeline. So it's that much easy. Same way you can use for Azure Logic Apps or other Azure services as well. So before conclude, if we have a few minutes, then I can show you here how you can integrate it with Azure Data Factory. So this is my Azure Data Factory and it has activity function. This is activity call. You can drag and drop. So similar way, I have already, let's delete this. I have already here. And you can see I just passing few information. I'm creating a link service which use a connection string. In order to connect function with Azure Data Factory, I need to create a link service, which is a connection holder. And here I'm passing function name hello function, which I have in here. You can even I can use manifest function as well. I use this function. And you can see that I'm using method and I'm just passing the message body. That's it. You don't need to do anything much. And when you run this one, it will execute your Azure function and Azure function return results into here and I can store into my variable as well. It's executed very quickly and you can check result as well here, whatever it has written. And here you can see what is input and what is output. So this is my function name, this is method, and this is a message body as well. And here you can see result as well, what it has. If there is error also, you can see error as well. And connecting them, I created this link service. I created key vaults because this time I have used this key vault, which hold the function key in a key vault because it's in central place. And then I have used this key vault in my Azure Data Factory. And then I have this is a link service, which is a getting secret from key vaults. That's it. And this way you can connect your Azure function in Azure Data Factory. And same way, similar way, you can do it in a like Logic apps or maybe other Azure service like Azure Synapse Analytics as well. So with that, I would like to conclude this session. So we have seen a quick overview of Azure Function and we see why it needs and how does it works. So Azure Function is a small piece of code you can write down into different languages. It is a trigger based, event based, so you can have a timer trigger, HTTP trigger, blob trigger, and there are many more triggers available which execute your piece of code or a function. It's a platform as a service and it's easy to integrate with other Azure services. For example, Azure Data Factory, even create Azure Logic Apps, Azure Synapse Analytics, and many more. And it has Azure AD security because it's Azure service. And then we have a seen tool like Azure Portal, Visual Studio 2019, we use PowerShell, CLI, and ARM templates as well. And then we have seen series of demo by creating function using the portal and creating function using Visual Studio, debugging them using the Visual Studio, testing them using Visual Studio and Postman and Azure Portal. And then we have seen two demo, which is with binding and without binding, like resizing image with binding and manifest file, which is without binding, and it's just using HTTP request. So uh, uh, with that, I would like to thank you for attending this session, and I'm open with question.
Great. Thank you, Alpa. As she said, if you have any questions, please jump in. You should be able to put them in the meeting chat, or you can come off mute and ask. I have one question, Alpa, which is with the image demo where you trigger an image was uploaded into blob storage, and a trigger was used to execute some code that created a medium version of it and a small version of it. What is the, can you say anything about the limitations of Azure Functions in this context? So for example, what if there was a 5 gigabyte image that you put in that was incredibly memory demanding to load into the code that, that did the transformations?
Yeah, that is a very good question. I think I haven't done that much like bigger size because I have used the same small dummy files. So at the moment, I don't know, but I will test it and let you know. I will place bigger file and see how it's reacting. But as far as I know, blob storage can contain a bigger file, more than 2 GB or 5 GB or like that. And Azure Function is resizing it. So it can be done, but I need to test it. I will definitely test it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, just curious. Yeah, I would imagine blob storage doesn't really have a meaningful limitation here. It's more the function about how much memory it can be allocated to do its work.
Yep. It's a very good question. Yeah, I will definitely test and let you know. Yeah.
Sure. No pressure, but I mean, I am kind of curious. And there's a question in the chat. I'm not sure if you're looking at it, Alpa. I can read it out. Kritika is interested in how to trigger HTTP functions using a logic app.
Logic apps, HTTP trigger using logic apps. So in logic apps has a function action function app as well. So we can do like that way, or we can use custom connector. So there are two ways you can do that: custom connector, or you can use action. There is a function related action will be available in logic apps.
Okay, so for the for the HTTP that you have created, so if I have to trigger that using the logic app, what would be the way that I can trigger? Should I have to use a HTTP as in create a logic app with the HTTP request and then process it, or
actually logic apps, go ahead.
Because like I have a scenario wherein I am receiving a trigger from a UI. Okay, so whenever I get a trigger from the UI, I have to run the function app that I have written. Okay, so in that case, if I am getting a request from the UI, which is a HTTP request, so I have to trigger my function app. So this function app that I have written has some validation, which again connects with a different endpoint and sends a request and receives a response, and I write it into the blob storage. So
I think,
so how can I, like, I'm not now into the creation of logic app, but what I would like to know is if I have to test it manually, like without any trigger, I'm facing some issue. So I would like to know if I create a manual trigger, how can I test it for that function?
Yeah, okay. So first of all, in logic apps, we have logic apps also have a trigger. So at the moment, I think you maybe use HTTP trigger when you create your logic apps. Yeah. So after that, you step operation and action you will select. So in action, you have a function. Automatically, you have Azure Function action as well, or you can have your custom activity, like custom connector. You can create your custom connector as and that one is like it works when your logic apps run by HTTP request. Your function is executed automatically in your steps, because logic apps itself has a trigger first of all because you have to choose a trigger in logic apps, and then you have steps. So in steps, you can use direct Azure function, or you can use a custom connector for that. So if it's custom connector, then you don't need even a function, it's like function, normal function, like it has a piece of code, individual code, and it can run as a part of executing your logic apps.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Do we have any, it's a Q&A, is it?
Yeah, there's one other question in there from Jeffrey. If you can see that. Oh yeah, you got it open.
Yeah. Any experience with requiring Azure AD authentication to trigger the function? So it's there a way to return an info of Azure AD user principal that trigger the function? It did not get much about this question.
I think, well, Jeffrey, you can come off and elaborate if you like. I think what he's asking is effectively, first of all, it's a two-part question, but the first part is there any other way to, I know you showed us the API key or the function key that you need to pass in if you want to invoke it as the way to authenticate the request.
Yeah.
And instead of using that key, can you use anything related to Azure Active Directory?
Yeah, I got it now. Yeah, you can have like client ID, like you create apps registration, and then you have a client ID and client secrets, and that way you can use it when you write down code in C#. And when you creating this way Azure AD way authentication, then yeah, you can have that one, client ID, client secret, tenant ID, tenant secrets, and those way you can generate a token, and then you can execute a piece of code as well. Means you write down that logic before someone execute your piece of code. Yeah. So yeah, so you can use that service principal at that time, and Azure AD user as well. Because
Is there, do you have any idea, does that also answer the second half of the question, if you happen to know anything about that?
second half of the question is the way to return the info of Azure AD user principal that trigger the function. That one, I think we can check in application insights. We get logs there. Who has run an IP address, and there are so many things is available, because here is generate BL token as well. So I think it has those information in app insights after execution of your function. But I haven't checked, like tried this one, but I can test it and let you know. Yeah. But I have definitely used the service principal and generating token, and then if that user is authenticated, then and then execute a function. So that things we have used in C#. Yep.
Yeah, and it may also be the case that in C# code, you can look at the, it's been a while since I've done this, is it an I principle? That from which you can just see whose context this is running under. So if it's an authenticated user, I would suppose that's who that I principle would point at, as the user who was authenticated through Azure AD.
Yep. And one question is like, considering my function app has a multiple function within it, it is possible to debug in VS specific function without involving the other function. Yeah, you can debug your individual function, because here you can see that I have a total, I have a 4 function, but 3 function, but one is a triggered based, like input binding and output binding related. So it's not coming here because it's automatically run. We don't need to do anything for that. Same as a timer trigger as well. But these two function is like individual one. So I can have this URL and I can run in wherever I want to run, using browser or Postman or like that. But I think you have a function app. So function app is continuously running. So even though you're not running individual 3 functions, You run maybe one function at a time, but function app will run. So, but you can individual run function and you can debug individual function as well. And yeah, you can debug it in Visual Studio. Even you can debug Azure function which is already in Azure. You can debug into local by changing in the settings here. For example, this function, I need to go to function app and config. Here is a setting. So that way, if your function is not working correctly, it's working in your local and it's not working correctly in a portal or in your dev test or SIT environment, then you can have here settings. So there is a debug option is available here. Remote debug on and off. So if you do on and you use this Visual Studio, and then you can have this function in your Postman. You can run in Postman or in your local using Visual Studio 29, and I think latest one maybe, or it's allowed, but not sure in 17 it's a work or not. But 19 or 22 is definitely will do. And then you can have that URL and you can run in locally. So at that way you can debug it, value and everything uh, in your local machine. Yeah. Is that answer your question, Kirtika?
Yeah, yes. So
Yeah,
one
yeah.
more question I have pinged you. So
Yeah. Okay. So if you want to move your function from local machine to your portal, then for example, I can show you here in my Visual Studio. Let's close this. So here you can deploy various different ways. So you can create AMP templates as well. So like I have created here. So this is it's a JSON file. You can get ready-made template from GitHub as well because Microsoft has that list of everything. So here what happened, it will create your, these are all parameters, which you can have a different for per environment. So that's why it's parameters. Here you have calculated variables. And then here you are creating resource without creating in portal. So you're creating your storage account, which is doing automatically when we create it. Then it's creating the service from, it's creating the function apps, and then it's creating the app service insight. So these four components which we done automatically, like by creating portal. So these are the components. Here we have AMP templates for that. So you can use AMP templates and then you can use your CI/CD pipelines like I have here. You can create it and it will deploy into many environments because this is very, very good when you have many environments or maybe you don't want to remember things because sometimes you do setting, if you do manually, then you have to remember it. And when you deploy it, you will forget it that what setting was there and what you had to change as well. So this way you can deploy as well. And another way, if you are beginner and you don't know about AMP template and like CI/CD pipeline and DevOps, then you can do it by here. But this way is not good because it's overwrite your things. So you can publish it and it will automatically create for you many things. You don't need to worry about creating them. So here you can see that if you are first time doing, because then it give you few options as well. These are the options. It will suggest you that what you need to do. So this is my code here, zip code. And then when I click on publish, it either complain if something is not matching or if it's happy, then it will publish successfully. So this way you can publish it, but it's asking for storage account mainly. And if because you have connection string or if you have event grid or something like that. So yeah, so this way you can do that. But at the moment, I think these are the options. So we are select, yeah, you can, oh, you can do like this way, or you can have new one, I think. So yeah, this way, if first time doing, then you do new one and you selecting which option. So you use Azure one. We are not using other one, import, export or container or like that. Then here you need to select similar way when we created in a portal, we selecting this option. So it will automatically create for you when we did earlier. It's asking your subscription, and these are the all information. Use resource group and those things if you do. And then after it, you just need to click next after that. So let's select this
So
one.
for the deployment using that is the DevOps, should I
Yeah.
have to have the installation like extensions installed, or how can I do that? Like the ARM template generation, which you
In
have.
okay, so in for that, I think you will get this template from GitHubs, because Microsoft has already their list of templates based on our requirements. So once you get templates, you need to add here project, which is you need to add a deployment project, which is ARM template projects here, new project. And then you need to place that JSON file and parameter into there. Yeah, this project, Azure Resource Project. But we need in C#. Let's see here. This first one. So if you search Azure Resource Project for deployment, and then you give suitable name as well. I'm just clicking next. So
Okay,
that
so
way it will,
it will
yeah,
have for Python as well, correct?
Python. No, ARM templates, this project is only in a JSON file. So I don't think you need a Python or anything. It's just a
Okay.
JSON file. Yeah. But it's C# or like that. So here you can see that. Yeah. But its code is a JSON code, and it's a simple code, like everything what we done in portal, similar ways we are doing here. And this is a very good because when you have more than one environment, or even you don't want to remember, because this is manual way, and it's always updating your config area and many things. So tomorrow or after 1 month, you maybe not remember. So it's not good. And another reason is that you have 3 environments and you deploy your function app, you test it like in testing environment, and then after that you can delete your function app. So you saving cost as well. And tomorrow you need again, then you just click here in DevOps, you just click here, create release, and it will automatically create for you everything. So it's like few minutes job by releasing using this button, and it save a cost as well, and it's 100% automate. So it's like you don't need to have any headache. uh, uh,
Okay.
yeah.
So while creating this template, I mean ARM template, it would also have a storage account, those keys, everything resolved.
Yeah.
Storage account that we use, everything resolved in it. So we don't have
Yeah.
to. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So here you can see that. Let's see. I think it's this one, not app inside. I think it's maybe here. So these are the properties. You can see that here. These are the ones. So we are already configuring here everything, like storage account and everything. So it's like automatically done after that, and it has a connection string also set up correctly in your function app, and everything is done by there. But if you do manually, then you have to do manual change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm facing with that issue. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's fine.
And
Yeah. Okay. I
yeah.
will try with that ARM template. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Thank
you
you.
let me know if you need more help on that. Yeah,
Sure.
because
Sure.
I have one video in YouTube where I have uploading using this ARM templates as well. So I will send you that link as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. I will connect you with link in LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Good exchange. I thank you. I thank you everybody for joining. And Alpa, is it like 20 past midnight in your local time zone?
Yeah.
Okay, we should wrap up and let you return to your life. It was great that we were able to have you join us. And Jason, did you want to let folks know what's going to happen with the YouTubes?
Yeah, so for those of you who are asking questions, I'll have this video uploaded to the YouTube channel probably within the next hour. So check the Meetup site for the link in the comments. I'll drop the link where you can find the YouTube link at that point. So if you want to rewatch it and help yourselves out, it'll be out on YouTube soon. All right. And that's it. I
Okay,
will
thank you,
stop the
everybody.
recording.
Oops.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Okay.
question as well. Bye. Take care.